What if the healthy breakfast sitting in your kitchen cabinet is the real reason America wakes up sick, sluggish, and deceived? What if that smiling cartoon on your cereal box is not a mascot, but a mask for one of the biggest food scandals in modern history? According to nutrition watchdogs, many popular cereals contain more sugar, by weight, than the desserts they claim to replace. The Environmental Working Group warns that some breakfast brands pack over 50% sugar, rivaling candy bars in sweetness, but wearing the disguise of wholesome mornings. Robert F. Kennedy Jr. calls it a national betrayal, a corporate sugar scam targeting families who trust those bright boxes to start their day right. How many spoons of sugar have you unknowingly eaten this week, thinking it was fuel? How many times has your health been traded for marketing profits? This is the Downturn Report, where the truth gets personal. And tonight, we expose the breakfast myth America doesn't want to believe. The so-called healthy cereals that contain more sugar than dessert. Kellogg's. It's almost poetic how Kellogg's built an empire on the promise of a healthy start, and then handed America a spoonful of slow poison before sunrise. Those smiling cartoon tigers and chirpy roosters on cereal boxes weren't breakfast mascots. They were salesmen in costume, pitching sugar as salvation. Robert F. Kennedy Jr. wasn't exaggerating when he warned that the so-called healthy breakfast industry is one of the biggest scams sitting on your pantry shelf. Take Kellogg's Frosted Mini Wheats, or Smart Start. Dressed up in health claims like lightly sweetened and heart healthy, yet a single serving of 53 grams hides 14 grams of sugar. That's 40% of your calories from sugar before you've even left the kitchen table. Imagine calling a donut diet food. That's how absurd this is. But the betrayal doesn't end with sugar. Back in 2010, 28 million boxes of Apple Jacks, Corn Pops, Fruit Loops, and Honey Smacks were recalled after people complained about nausea, vomiting, and a waxy taste traced to 2-methylnaphthalene, a chemical linked to possible cancer risk. Your fun breakfast was flirting with the same compounds used in mothballs. Then came the Federal Trade Commission, catching Kellogg's red-handed for lying that its Frosted Mini Wheats made kids 20% more attentive and that Rice Krispies boosted immunity, as if sugar could replace sleep. And behind the glossy ads lay something darker still. A 2016 Amnesty International report tied Kellogg's palm oil supplier to child labor. Kids as young as 8 sweating for those family cereals. By the time you pour that cheerful bowl of Honey Smacks, 56% sugar by weight, you're not just eating breakfast, you're swallowing corporate deceit, chemical residue, and a generation's worth of exploitation dressed up in a smiley box. The real crunch isn't in your cereal, it's in your conscience. Post-consumer brands. If Kellogg's was the magician of breakfast illusions, then post-consumer brands is the smooth-talking salesman at the next table, smiling wide while quietly selling you sugar in disguise. Robert F. Kennedy Jr.'s warning about America's healthy breakfast scam hits a little too close to home here. Picture those glowing boxes of honey bunches of oats and great grains, whispering promises of wholesome mornings while hiding spoonfuls of deceit beneath every crunchy bite. In 2016, a California lawsuit ripped the mask off, accusing Post of pushing high-sugar cereals as smart and nutritious. The fine print told a darker truth. Each serving carried sugar levels that could make a cupcake blush. The company eventually shelled out $15 million in 2021 and quietly agreed to stop labeling anything wholesome if more than 10% of its calories came from added sugar. Translation? Most of their cereals had been preaching health from the pulpit while snacking on sin behind the altar. But if sugar wasn't enough to sour your appetite, the metal might. In June 2025, Post recalled over 5,000 boxes of Honey Bunches of Oats with almonds due to possible metal contamination. Yes, metal. Turning breakfast into a potential dental nightmare. The FDA called it a Class 2 recall, the kind where you might escape serious harm, if luck's on your side. Earlier, the brand also pulled its Great Grains protein blend off shelves after fears of listeria contamination. And just when you thought the deceit was done, the honey in Honey Bunches turned out to be mostly sugar, corn syrup, and PR spin, not the golden nectar the packaging promised. Imagine bees suing for defamation. Each box feels less like breakfast and more like a cover-up operation with cartoon mascots as accomplices. The label says Smart Start, but the smarter move might be walking right past it. Cap'n Crunch. Cap'n Crunch has sailed through American breakfast tables for over half a century, waving its cheery little captain hat like a sugary Trojan horse. Behind that cartoon smile lies a storm of deceit so thick you could drown in it before your first sip of milk. Robert F. Kennedy Jr.'s warnings about fake healthy foods might as well have been written for this grinning imposter. The Environmental Working Group once revealed that Cap'n Crunch's Crunch Berries pack 42.3% sugar by weight, meaning your morning bowl carries more sugar than a slice of frosted cake. That's not breakfast. That's dessert in a sailor's costume. Parents hand it to their kids thinking, just a fun start, but what they're really doing is launching a sugar torpedo straight into their children's bloodstreams. It's the kind of betrayal that hides behind nostalgia, where childhood memories meet corporate greed and get crushed under a spoon. But this isn't just about sugar highs. In December 2023, Quaker Oats, the company steering the Captain ship under PepsiCo's flag, was forced into a massive recall of over 40 cereal and snack products, including Cap'n Crunch, after potential salmonella contamination. By January 2024, the recall expanded, with the FDA receiving 24 adverse event reports tied to Quaker's Illinois facility, one with a documented history of positive salmonella tests going back to 2020. Add to that a class action claim exposing pesticide contamination. Chlormequat found in oat-based products at up to 300 parts per billion, and the illusion of wholesome breakfast sinks fast. Quaker even settled another lawsuit for $6.75 million after marketing its cereals as safe and healthy amid those very violations. Each spoonful now feels like shaking hands with a captain who swears loyalty while plundering your trust. The truth? Cap'n Crunch isn't leading a fleet of joy. It's captaining a shipwreck of sugar, chemicals, and corporate denial. General Mills. General Mills has mastered the art of deception so elegantly, it could teach a masterclass in breakfast manipulation. For decades, the company's smiling mascots and warm family breakfast slogans have drifted into American kitchens like a friendly neighbor. Only this one's secretly selling candy disguised as nourishment. Robert F. Kennedy Jr.'s warning about fake healthy foods echoes loudest here, because the betrayal runs deep. In 2016, a California lawsuit accused General Mills of marketing its sugary cereals, Cheerios, Cocoa Puffs, and Cookie Crisp, as healthy and wholesome, despite sugar levels that could make a pastry shop blush. Take Cheerios protein, for instance, 16 to 17 grams of sugar per serving, compared to just 1 gram in the original Cheerios. That's like swapping your oatmeal for frosting and calling it self-care. Consumers thought they were pouring nutrition. Turns out they were spooning dessert in disguise. But this isn't just about a sweet tooth. It's about corporate negligence camouflaged as care. In October 2015, General Mills had to recall nearly 1.8 million boxes of Cheerios and Honey Nut Cheerios labeled gluten-free after discovering wheat contamination. The irony? The very cereal marketed for those with dietary restrictions was laced with the allergen they were trying to avoid. And while some sugar-related lawsuits were dismissed on technicalities, because the sugar content was accurately listed, that legal loophole might as well be a punchline. The judge even wrote that the company wasn't obligated to warn consumers about the dangers of excess sugar. Translation, they can legally sweeten you into sickness, and it's your job to read between the lines. So when you see that friendly honeybee buzzing on a yellow box, or the Cocoa Puffs mascot bouncing with joy, remember, you're not buying breakfast, you're buying marketing. Behind those cheerful faces lies a roulette wheel of sugar spikes, labeling games, and quiet recalls. Each spoonful isn't a great start to your day. It's a gamble on how much corporate spin your body can stomach before the sweetness turns sour. Malt oatmeal. Malt oatmeal has long sold itself as the working man's breakfast deal. Big bags, low price, and the illusion that value means safe. But sometimes cheap doesn't just cost your wallet less, it costs your body more. Robert F. Kennedy Jr.'s warning about the healthy breakfast scam could have had this brand's name stamped on it. Behind those rainbow-colored boxes and marshmallow smiles hides a sugar avalanche so massive it could make a donut blush. According to the Environmental Working Group, malt meal's Golden Puffs and Berry Colossal Crunch with marshmallows clock in at over 50% sugar by weight. That's right, half your breakfast is basically candy pretending to be cereal. Imagine starting your day with a spoonful of frosting and calling it fuel. It's not breakfast, it's a dessert buffet on clearance. But the nightmare doesn't stop with sugar, it gets bacterial. In June 1998, malt oatmeal had to recall every box of its plain toasted oat cereal, plus 38 private label versions. After Salmonella agona contamination sickened 211 people across 12 states. 47 were hospitalized. A full decade later, in 2008, they did it again. Another salmonella scare, this time in puffed rice and puffed wheat cereals. 23 people got sick across 14 states. That's not a coincidence. That's a pattern. For a brand that markets itself as family-friendly, it's hard to ignore that families ended up in hospitals because of it. So when you pour a bowl of malt oatmeal thinking you're saving money, you might actually be gambling your health on the cheapest ticket in the cereal casino. High sugar, repeat contamination, and decades of recall drama. This isn't breakfast, it's Russian roulette with a plastic spoon. The box might promise value, but what you're really buying is risk, shrink-wrapped in nostalgia. Because in the end, it's not the price tag that should scare you. It's how much danger a company can fit into one bargain-sized bag. Mom's Best Cereals. Mom's Best Cereals sounds like something straight out of a Norman Rockwell painting. Homey, simple, the kind of brand that makes you think of a kitchen window glowing at sunrise and a mother lovingly pouring wholesome oats into a bowl. But under that eco-friendly halo and soft green packaging lies something far less comforting. A sugar-coated illusion wrapped in corporate spin. Robert F. Kennedy Jr.'s warning about fake healthy breakfasts could hang right over this brand's banner. Those boxes of Honey Nut Toasty O's and Honey Grahams aren't feeding virtue. They're feeding the same kind of sugar buzz that once made kids bounce off classroom walls. Consumer advocacy reports note that their added sugar levels match many old-school junk cereals. The only difference is the marketing wears a sweater instead of sequins. You think you're buying nature's sweetness? What you're really buying is PR dressed in beige. Then came the honey scandal. In October 2023, a class action lawsuit accused Mom's Best of falsely advertising its cereals as made with real honey, even though tests showed they contained mostly cheap sweeteners and only trace amounts of actual honey. In other words, you're not tasting the work of bees. You're tasting the boardroom's budget cuts. The betrayal feels sharper when you learn this isn't their first stumble. Back in 2013, the brand's predecessor, Emom Brands, had to settle a lawsuit after antifreeze-tainted vitamin C turned up in its marshmallow cereals. That stain doesn't wash off easily, even if the boxes got greener and slogans gentler. So when you reach for that pastel box promising better mornings, remember, this isn't Mother Nature. It's marketing motherhood. You're spooning up sugar, sipping spin, and swallowing a legacy of ethical shortcuts. A brand that preaches honesty but hides syrup behind honey has already broken its promise before your first bite. The only best part of Mom's Best might be the name itself. And even that feels like a cruel joke at breakfast time. Nestlé. Nestlé has spent decades wrapping itself in a halo of trust. The smiling blue logos, the wholesome family slogans, the promise that breakfast with their cereals means order, nutrition, and a fresh start. But peel back the label, and that halo begins to look more like a noose woven from sugar, hypocrisy, and double standards. In 2024, an investigation by the Swiss NGO Public Eye and the International Baby Food Action Network exposed a stunning truth. Nestlé's baby cereals sold in lower-income countries were laced with added sugar, up to 6 grams per serving, while the exact same products sold in Germany, Switzerland, and the UK contained none. Picture that, one brand, 2 recipes, and a moral compass split in half. For the West, no added sugar. For the rest, good morning, here's your sweetened exploitation. It's not nutrition, it's colonialism with a breakfast spoon. But the betrayal didn't stop at sugar. It crystallized, literally, into a safety hazard. In February 2025, Nestlé's Frosted Shreddies were yanked off shelves across the UK and Ireland after shards of hardened sugar were found in several batches, posing a choking risk. Consumers were told not to eat anything with batch codes like 4285095, 2 or 429 13451, best before July 2025. A recall for sharp sugar pieces sounds like dark comedy until you realize it could have been lodged in a child's throat instead of a breakfast bowl. That's not crunchy texture. That's negligence dressed as novelty. And the shadow over Nestlé stretches far beyond one cereal aisle. Since the 1970s, the Boycott Nestlé movement has called out the company for unethical marketing of infant formula in developing countries. And this new sugar scandal feels like a rerun of the same moral failure. Nestlé defends itself by claiming it's simply adapting to local preferences. But that's like saying a fox tailors its diet to the weakness of the henhouse. When you pour a bowl of Nestlé cereal today, you're not just feeding your family. You're swallowing a legacy of inequality, recalls, and corporate double talk. It's the kind of breakfast that doesn't start your day, it starts your distrust. Honey Smacks. Honey Smacks is the kind of cereal that grins at you from the shelf like an old friend. All bright colors, cartoon frogs, and wholesome honey charm, until you realize it's been lying to you for decades. Originally launched in the early 1950s as Sugar Smacks, the rebrand to Honey Smacks in the 1980s was a marketing trick so transparent it's almost insulting. They dropped the word sugar, not the sugar itself. According to documented reports, nearly 2/3 of its weight comes straight from sugar and dextrose, meaning your puffed wheat is basically a confection in disguise. It's like calling a cupcake whole grain because it technically contains flour. For a cereal that markets itself to families, that's not breakfast. That's dessert with a public relations department. But the real horror hit in 2018 when Kellogg's had to recall both 15.3-ounce and 23-ounce boxes of Honey Smacks due to a salmonella outbreak. 135 people across 36 states fell ill, and the CDC traced it directly back to the cereal. Later, in February 2023, Kerry Inc., the ingredient supplier, pleaded guilty to federal misdemeanor charges and paid $19.2 million in fines after inspectors found 81 positive salmonella tests in its production facility between 2016 and 2018. That's not an accident. That's a corporate shrug in the face of contamination alarms. Imagine your breakfast being made in a plant so careless it treated bacteria warnings like spam emails. So when you pour a bowl of Honey Smacks, you're not just eating sugar, you're eating from a crime scene of complacency. The cereal's very name is now an unintentional confession smack, as in the slap of betrayal against every parent who thought they were giving their kids something harmless. The box sells sweetness and fun, but what it delivers is a combination of dessert-level sugar and safety negligence that would make any regulator's head spin. If this cereal were a person, it wouldn't be your childhood friend. It'd be the one who borrowed your trust and never gave it back. Honey Bunches of Oats. Honey Bunches of Oats struts into your kitchen every morning, dressed like the hero of health itself. The sunburst logo glowing like salvation, the honey dipper dripping golden promise, and that smiling bee buzzing about wholesome goodness. But peel back the box, and you're not meeting a hero. You're meeting a con artist in a cape made of sugar. Behind all the smart and heart-healthy talk lies a breakfast that's far more candy than nutrition. Court filings have exposed what the brand won't tell you. The majority of its sweetness doesn't come from honey at all, but from refined sugar, corn syrup, molasses, and malted barley syrup. Honey sits near the bottom of the ingredient list, practically an afterthought. It's like a politician shaking hands for the camera while someone else counts the lobbyist cash behind the curtain. The truth hit the courtroom too. In 2021, Post agreed to a $15 million settlement for falsely marketing Honey Bunches of Oats and other cereals as wholesome and nutritious. Those cheery slogans were less about health and more about selling trust. Trust that they've been quietly cashing in for years. And as if the sugar deception weren't enough, the safety alarms began ringing in June 2025, when the FDA classified a Class 2 recall of over 5,000 boxes of honey bunches of oats with almonds after possible metal contamination. Imagine expecting a sweet crunch and finding a metallic shard instead. Post tried to calm the storm by claiming the boxes never reached retail shelves. But that reassurance sounds a lot like a car company saying, "Don't worry, the brakes only failed during testing." Even the numbers don't lie. 8 grams of added sugar in a 42-gram serving. Not the worst offender, but still proof that this healthy breakfast runs on refined sweetness. And when you pour it for your family, you're not just serving cereal, you're serving a case study in corporate duplicity. It's the kind of betrayal that sticks between your teeth. A reminder that in America's cereal aisle, even the friendliest bee can sting. So next time that box winks at you with golden promises, remember, heroes don't hide their sugar, and breakfast shouldn't come with a side of metal filings. Kashi. Kashi has long strutted into American kitchens like the yoga instructor of the cereal aisle. Calm, organic-looking, and full of buzzwords about balance, nature, and mindfulness. But under that green and brown halo sits a brand that's been caught bending its own rules so many times, it might as well teach a class on ethical flexibility. Robert F. Kennedy Jr.'s warning about the healthy breakfast scam feels tailor-made for this one, because Kashi's promise of purity has proved to be more marketing mantra than moral compass. Sure, the boxes whisper whole grain, natural, and better for you, but several of its cereals have been flagged for packing as much sugar as the so-called junk brands they claim to rise above. That's the trick. Sugar disguised in a robe of virtue. You think you're pouring wellness. In reality, you're scooping dessert with better branding. Then came the day the illusion cracked. In April 2012, a Rhode Island store owner pulled every box of Kashi off his shelves after the Cornucopia Institute exposed that natural Kashi cereals were laced with genetically modified soy and other non-organic grains. The fallout was swift. Loyal customers flooded the company's inbox, calling it a betrayal of everything you supposedly stand for. One message read like a public breakup. "Not anymore. You are despicable." Kashi scrambled to repair its image, promising by 2015 that new products would be at least 70% organic and non-GMO project verified. But by then, the halo had slipped, and consumers had seen the sweat behind the serenity. A few years later, in May 2016, Kashi recalled snack bars and granola after its sunflower seed supplier tested positive for listeria contamination. Though not directly tied to its cereals, the recall spotlighted what critics called a culture of loose quality oversight. Proof that a brand preaching purity wasn't living it. The sugar confusion, the GMO scandal, the contamination recall. It all adds up to a breakfast identity crisis. Kashi markets itself like a health retreat, but what it's serving is more of a marketing detox nightmare. Each spoonful feels like sitting beside a smiling driver who says, "Relax, we're on the wellness road," while the sugar meter climbs and the check engine light for integrity blinks. For anyone chasing honest fuel for their body, Kashi isn't the sanctuary it claims to be. It's a mirage of morality in a bowl of misplaced trust. Malt oatmeal berry, colossal crunch. Malt oatmeal's berry colossal crunch walks into your breakfast bowl wearing the colors of a carnival. Bright berry-tinted pieces promising fun, crunch, and childhood nostalgia. But beneath the fireworks of flavor lies a nutritional ambush. According to its own nutrition label, a single serving, 38 grams, or roughly 1 1/3 cups, contains 17 grams of added sugar. That's 1/3 of all its calories, meaning for every 3 spoonfuls you take, 1 is pure sugar. The Environmental Working Group has gone further, ranking the marshmallow version of this cereal among the worst sugar offenders in the entire children's cereal aisle, with over 50% sugar by weight. So when you think you're starting your morning with value, what you're really buying is dessert on discount, an undercover sugar heist carried out before 8 a.m. But the betrayal doesn't stop at sweetness. It's written in the fine print. Independent assessments, including from Foodikit, slap the cereal with a C- rating for problematic ingredients and excessive sugar. Translation: it's not just bad for you, it's bad with confidence. The brand markets itself as smart value, but it's the kind of value that makes your bank account smile while your bloodstream files a complaint. Each bag trades price for quality, using cheaper refined ingredients and synthetic flavors to mimic premium cereals, while quietly loading your body with sugar that burns through your energy faster than a gas leak. And then there's the trust factor, the part that should make anyone hesitate before that next pour. Malt-O-Meal as a company has a history stained with contamination scandals. In 1998, a massive Salmonella agona outbreak forced the recall of all plain toasted oat cereals across 38 private label brands, sickening over 200 people. A decade later, in 2008, the same story replayed with salmonella-tainted puff cereals linked to 23 illnesses in 14 states. So even if Berry Colossal Crunch hasn't made the latest recall list, it still lives in the shadow of its parents' negligence. The past doesn't just haunt the brand, it hangs over every bowl. So let's call it what it is. Malt-O-Meal Berry Colossal Crunch isn't breakfast. It's a sugar circus wrapped in a budget disguise, a cheap thrill at your body's expense. Each bite waves a pink flag of fun while whispering the fine print your metabolism can't ignore. You're not fueling your morning, you're feeding the illusion of a deal. Because the real price of this cereal isn't paid at the register, it's paid by your health. Post-Golden Crisp. Post-Golden Crisp struts down the cereal aisle like a sugar-coated con artist. Cartoon bear grinning, rays of sunshine blazing, whispering promises of fun mornings and sweet energy. But beneath that golden glow lies one of the biggest nutritional frauds in America's breakfast landscape. According to the Environmental Working Group's 2014 report, Golden Crisp contains a staggering 52% sugar by weight. That's not breakfast, that's candy wearing a cereal costume. Every spoonful you take is like eating cookies for breakfast, while the box smiles and calls it wholesome. Parents think they're giving their kids something harmless, but the truth is closer to feeding them a bowl of dessert dusted with denial. And if the sugar alone didn't sink your appetite, the legal record should. In 2021, Post Consumer Brands, the parent company behind Golden Crisp, paid $15 million to settle a class action lawsuit accusing it of misleading advertising. Consumers allege that cereals like Golden Crisp were marketed as smart, natural, and nutritious, even though the sugar levels could make a dentist wince. The court found that while the company's statements were technically true, they painted a deceptive picture when placed next to sugar counts like 14 grams per serving, over half the cereal's weight. In plain English, you're not just eating sugar, you're paying premium prices for a company to lie about it with a smile. Golden Crisp hasn't made major recall headlines recently, but the damage doesn't have to come from contamination. Sometimes it's baked right into the marketing. The real hazard here is the quiet normalization of sugar as breakfast fuel, an illusion so polished it's almost art. But make no mistake, your body knows the truth. When the cartoon bear on the box says, "Good morning," your pancreas mutters, "Not again." This isn't cereal, it's a breakfast betrayal wrapped in nostalgia, designed to trick generations into starting their day with a spoonful of disease risk. Golden Crisp might sparkle in your bowl, but beneath that shine is a brand that's been selling sugar under the disguise of sunshine for far too long. Before your next bite, ask yourself, are you eating breakfast or being eaten by it? Subscribe now and choose truth over comfort.
Thanks so much for sticking with us to the very end. If you liked this video, make sure to give it a like and subscribe so you won't miss any of our daily updates. And now feel free to check out some of our latest and most popular videos showing up on your screen. Goodbye, and see you in the next one.